And to complete the most significant news for this day, Y News continues. Here are the top stories. Budget Secretary Benjamin Diokno believes that the Congress will be able to pass the 3.757 trillion pesos proposed national budget for 2019 before the end of the year. This is despite delays in its passage, with the Senate earlier saying it might finish its deliberation on the measure by January or February. Diokno says the lawmakers must prioritize the proposal instead of planning for their respective year-end vacations during their holiday break beginning December 12. The secretary also stresses that reenacting a budget shouldn't be a practice in the government because such would have a negative implication to the country's economy, noting its effect to the administration's infrastructure program and other projects.
A big contributor to growth. Okay? Can you imagine if there's no construction? So that will kind of slow down growth, right? And it will also slow down employment because no construction means no jobs, means more poverty. In the executive department, have done our job. The president has done his job. He submitted the proposed 2019 budget ahead of schedule. The Constitution says within 30 days after the SONA. He submitted it on the day of the SONA. So the approval of the 2019 General Appropriations Act is now in Congress's court.
PT&T and Sear Telecom want the government to disqualify Mislatel Consortium from being awarded as the country's third major telecommunications player. During a Senate inquiry earlier on the process of selecting the third telco player, Sear Telecom Chairman and President Chavit Singson argued that Mislatel should have been disqualified from the beginning as it has an existing contract with them which bars the company from entering into another deal. The Department of Information and Communications Technology, on the other hand, says it will continue the process of awarding the contract to the winning bidder unless the court decides on the complaints of the losing bidder. However, still, the agency admits that the legal battle will surely affect the entry of the third telco.
Hypothetically, sir, we'll just abide by the decision of the court.
Senator Grace Poe, meanwhile, insists to conduct a thorough scrutiny on the background of the third telco, despite the ICT's assurance that the entry of China Telecom is not a threat to national security. Poe says this is to probe the possible implication of the reported hijacking incident of China Telecom on internet traffic that affects even powerful countries.
Parang hinijack po nila yung 15% ng web traffic.
Madam Chair, we have heard about that report. It is subject to validation on our part. We have the 90 days period to do that. And the winning provisional NMP will have to undergo a background check by the National Intelligence and Coordinating Agency.
Airlines are moving operations from the old Tagbilaran Airport to the new Bohol Airport in Panglao beginning Wednesday. This as the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, or CAAP, issued a notice stating that the old airport will be officially decommissioned for commercial operations starting 6 p.m. Tuesday. The transfer comes as the Philippines' newest and first Eco Airport formally opens for business today. The Panglao International Airport is the first airport in the country that uses renewable and sustainable structures, as it features water treatment facilities and rain collection system with solar panels that can supply 30% of the airport's overall energy requirements. With the opening of the Green Airport, the province of Bohol eyes to double its tourist arrivals by 2020, as well as investments that are expected to create more jobs for Boholanos. In other news, the Bureau of Customs assures overseas Filipino workers that their Balikbayan boxes will be safe and secured with the strict implementation of its no opening of Balikbayan boxes policy. Under the Memorandum Order Number 18/2018, Balikbayan boxes will only undergo X-ray and canine inspections and will only be opened if suspicious items are detected. All district collectors and other concerned customs personnel are also ordered to subject to 100% physical examination the alerted Balikbayan boxes only in the presence of the consignees or his duly authorized representative. The policy also allows OFWs to send Balikbayan boxes up to 3 times in a year, provided that the total value per sender will not exceed 150,000 pesos and the items or goods sent are not in commercial quantities. Balikbayan box senders are also advised to only ship items that are for personal and household effects. Freight forwarders are also required to ensure that only personal effects and household goods are sent through consolidated shipment of Balikbayan boxes.
What you can send are personal effects, which are commodities, whether new or used, for personal use or consumption and not for commercial purposes. So hindi pwede na ito ay for business na purpose, no, na ibebenta or pang-inventory ng ating mga tindahan.
Meanwhile, former First Lady and now Ilocos Norte Representative Imelda Marcos is planning to elevate her Sandigan Bayan GRAFT case to the Supreme Court. In a notice of appeal filed before the Sandigan Bayan's 5th Division, Marcos has requested that her case records be submitted to the Supreme Court, where she plans to question her conviction. The move comes a little 2 weeks after the anti-GRAFT court convicted Marcos of 7 GRAFT cases and sentenced of up to 11 years of imprisonment for each case for illegally creating and maintaining Swiss bank accounts during the Marcos regime. Although Marcos was given temporary liberty after posting a 150,000 peso bail, the anti-GRAFT court is still deliberating on whether to grant her motion to be allowed to file post-conviction remedies. The reconciled version of the Universal Health Care Bill gets a nod from the Congressional Bicameral Conference Committee. The bill seeks to provide all Filipinos access to government's health services. Special packages will also be given to active PhilHealth members. According to Senate Committee on Health and Demography Chairman J.V. Ejercito, the funding for the project will be guaranteed in the current budget, at least in the first 2 years once the bill is signed into law. For the succeeding years, Congress will need to approve additional taxes for tobacco to meet the necessary funds under the Universal Health Care Law. Ejercito hopes the bill will be signed by President Rodrigo Duterte this year.
It has been agreed upon that there will be a special package or incentive for the regular contributories for them to continue.
And for the news abroad, here's Kath Dumaraos live from Bangkok, Thailand. Kath, good evening.
Good evening, William. U.S. President Donald Trump says he is likely to go ahead with a hike on tariffs currently imposed on Chinese goods. The comments to the Wall Street Journal come as he is expected to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of this week's G20 summit. The tariffs would be raised from 10% to 25% on $200 billion worth of goods. Trump also says he would hit the risk of China's imports to the U.S. with tariffs if talks will not go well. The newspaper also reports that it would be highly unlikely for the U.S. president to agree to Beijing's request to hold off on the planned tariff rise. The #1 car-making company in the U.S. earns criticisms from President Donald Trump following its announcement to slash production and jobs next year. Beverly Saison tells us why.
General Motors Company said on Monday it will cut production of slow-selling models and slash its North American workforce because of a declining market for traditional gas-powered sedans, shifting more investment to electric and autonomous vehicles. GM's actions add up to the biggest restructuring for the U.S. #1 car maker since its bankruptcy a decade ago and mark a turning point for the North American auto industry. U.S. automakers have enjoyed nearly a decade of prosperity since the 2008-2009 financial crisis and the government bailouts of GM and the former Chrysler Corporation. GM's announcement immediately drew criticisms from U.S. President Donald Trump, highlighting the political risks facing GM. He demanded the automaker find a new vehicle to build in Ohio and added that he had told GM Chief Executive Mary Barra he was unhappy with her decision to cut production at an Ohio factory. Ohio will be a key state in the 2020 presidential campaign.
I think you're going to see something else happen there, but I'm not happy about it. Their car is not selling well, so they'll put something else. I have no doubt that in a not too distant future, they'll put something else. They better put something else in.
GM did not immediately comment on Trump's remarks, but the company noted it has other facilities in Ohio, including a transmission plant in Toledo and metal center in Parma. GM plans to halt production next year at 3 assembly plants: the Lordstown small car factory near Youngstown, Ohio, the Detroit Hamtramck complex in Detroit, and the Oshawa, Ontario assembly complex near Toronto. It will also stop building several models now assembled at those plants, including the Chevrolet Cruze, the Chevrolet Volt Hybrid, the Cadillac CT6, and the Buick LaCrosse. The United Auto Workers, which represents U.S. workers, vowed to fight the cuts. General Motors' decision. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he spoke with GM CEO Mary Barra and expressed deep disappointment. The Prime Minister also said they will do everything they can to support GM workers.
Our government will always stand with our auto workers and do everything we can to support them in these difficult times.
Beverly Saison, UNTV News and Rescue.
Parts of Ukraine are set to be placed under martial law following a conflict with Russian forces in the Black Sea. Meanwhile, a British academic jailed for life on spying charges in the United Arab Emirates has been granted pardon. Jovic Burmas tells us why.
In Ukraine, lawmakers voted on Monday to back a proposal by President Petro Poroshenko to introduce martial law for a period of 30 days in areas of the country most vulnerable to an attack from Russia. They also voted to confirm that Ukraine would hold presidential elections on the 31st of March. The vote followed the capture of 3 Ukrainian vessels by Russia over the weekend, a crisis that threatened to pitch the two countries into open conflict. Separately, the International Monetary Fund said introducing martial law would have no bearing on continued IMF cooperation with Ukraine. In USA, prosecutors say that Paul Manafort, President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman, has breached a plea bargain agreement by lying to the FBI. The special counsel investigating alleged Russian meddling in the U.S. election said the breach meant there was now no reason to delay sentencing. In August, Manafort was convicted for financial fraud relating to his work as a political consultant in Ukraine. Manafort's lawyers say they believe he provided truthful information. A month later, he pleaded guilty to 2 other criminal charges in a plea deal with special counsel Robert Mueller. In UAE, a British academic jailed for life on spying charges has been pardoned on Monday as part of a mass clemency of more than 700 prisoners to mark the country's National Day. The pardon was effective immediately, and Matthew Hedges, a 31-year-old doctoral student at Durham University who was held for more than 6 months, will be allowed to leave the country once formalities are completed. Hedges has been held since 5th of May when he was arrested at Dubai International Airport after a 2-week research visit. His family and university have cast Hedges as a talented researcher who fell foul of the UAE's security and justice system. The UAE cast him as a British spy who was given a fair trial for grave espionage offences. Britain's Foreign Minister Jeremy Hunt welcomed the move, saying the UK government had not agreed with the charges against Hedges. Jovic Burmas, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the news from the other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you very much, Kath Dumaraos, live from Bangkok, Thailand. NASA celebrates InSight's arrival on the planet Mars after its 6-month journey from Earth for an unprecedented seismic mission. Beverly Saison tells us why.
Touchdown confirmed.
NASA's Mars Science lander InSight touched down safely on the surface of the red planet on Monday, November 26, to begin its 2-year mission. Engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, near Los Angeles burst into cheers and applause as they received signals confirming InSight's arrival on Martian soil.
It was an incredibly emotional experience. To think about working for 7 years, as many of the people here in the room have done.
Minutes later, JPL controllers received a fuzzy selfie photograph of the probe's new surroundings on the red planet, showing the edge of one lander leg beside a rock. The landing data and first image were relayed to Earth from one of 2 miniature satellites that were launched along with InSight and were flying past Mars as it reached its destination.
First image from the Viking lander, that bright red image, we'd seen all these nice black and white images from the moon, and they were amazing, but this bright red image from Mars, and it's the first image from another planet, and now I'm looking at this image from InSight, and it's just it's like a full circle of a whole career, working towards understanding Mars better.
The landing capped a 6-month journey of 301 million miles from Earth, following InSight's launch from California in May. InSight will spend 24 months, about 1 Martian year, collecting a wealth of data to unlock mysteries about how Mars formed, and by extension, the origins of the Earth and other rocky planets of the inner solar system. Beverly Saison, UNTV News and Rescue.
A bistro in Kathmandu becomes the first fully digitized restaurant in Nepal. Leslie Longbowen tells us why.
Locally made robots took over waiting duties in a Kathmandu restaurant. Naulo is the first fully digitized restaurant in both Nepal and South Asia to use robots to wait tables. Customers use touch screens to place their orders, and Ginger, the waiter robot, brings everything to the table. Ginger was made by local tech company Paila Technology and is equipped with swarm intelligence, object recognition, speech recognition, and auto-dock capability.
We saw there is a potential market in the international market for waiter robot, mostly where the labor cost is very high. We compared with different robots around the world, around the companies which are producing around the world, and then we developed this service robots here in Nepal.
Although a bit slow on its wheels, the waiter robots are popular with local customers and children who often try to divert it from its trajectory. Aayush Kasaju, director of Paila Technology and owner of Naulo Restaurant, says the idea of creating Ginger came as they saw opportunities for robots in the international service industry. 3 waiter robots are currently working at Naulo, which opened its doors to the public 4 months ago. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the reasons behind the news, November 27, 2018. I am William Thio. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Good evening.
UNTV, your public service channel.